hideout.
In this video, we will dive into the movie Bad Boys for Life 2022. We will discuss the movie story, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we'll cover some movie production details and box office performance. Finally, we'll provide a review and share some personal reactions. Let's begin with the story. The film starts with Detective Mike Lowrey, Milk Smith, and Marcus Burnett, Martin Lawrence, speeding through the street of Miami with other cops following them. They arrive at a hospital and rot inside as they head to the room where Marcus' daughter, Megan, played by Bianca Bethan, has given birth to a baby boy. His wife Teresa, played by Therese Randall, and Morgan's fiancé Reggie, played by Dennis Green, are there as well. Informing Marcus that the boy is named after him, he probably holds his grandson. In a Mexican prison, inmate Isabel Arcades, played by Kate Del Castillo, is murdering in an incantation that draws guards' attention. Isabel grabs a knife off the guard and stabs her, with the other inmates jumping in and stabbing her to death. Other guards take Isabel outside, only for her son Armando, played by Jacob Sokipow, to help her kill off the other guards. He frees her and they return to their home to plot revenge on behalf of late husband Benito, with Mike being their intended final target. Armando goes to the docks to pull out a crate filled with money with intent to work with other gangsters, but these gangsters try to screw him other and take the majority shares of the money. With their guns drawn on Armando, they retaliate by stabbing everyone repeatedly. He then orders the remaining men to step out if they wish to work royally under his family. A crook named Lorenzo Rugged Ekazatvelo, played by Nicky Jam, joins him. Mike and Marcus fellow officers, including Captain Howard, played by Joe Petilano, gather at about to celebrate Murder becoming a grandfather. They encounter a woman named Rita, played by Paula Nunez, who has just been promoted to lieutenant and is also Mike's ex. She informs that she is also now heading AMO Advanced Miami Metro Operation, which implies a younger team of officers. Marcus knows they are getting too old for all the crazy things they used to get into, and he asks Mike to settle down, though he disagrees. The two go outside to have a foot race, and as Mike takes the lead, Armando rides up a motorcycle and shoots Mike down. He gets away as the officer rushes to help Mike. Mike is in critical condition. Marcus prays to God that Mike be saved, with a promise that Marcus will never bring anyone violence into the world. Rita and Howard then order Emo Kelly, played by Vanessa Hogan, Dawn, played by Arenta Lockwood, and Rafe, played by Charles Melton, to do what they do: investigate Mike's shooter. Meanwhile, Isabel critiques Armando for going after Mike so soon, as she relatively wants him to die large so that he suffers watching others die. The process to go after a judge, a franchise analytics, and a prostitute, killing them all in broad daylight. 6 months later, Megan and Ricky get married, and Mike had recovered from his injuries. He delivers a speech at the wedding before later asking Marcus to help him catch the shooter, but Marcus refuses, fearing someone else will get hurt, and he insists that he is retired. After learning Mike is awake, Armando uploads his body cam footage of his shooting Mike. He goes to Rita for help but is also met with the same refusal. Mike takes it upon himself to find his shooter. He visits a retired criminal named Manny the Butcher, played by D.G. Khaled, and beats him in hand with a hammer until he gives up the name of a guy named Booker Gracie, played by Rory Markham, who would have info on the owner of the motorcycle and therefore the shooter. Mike goes to Captain Howard, who braggingly him go along with the ammo to find Gracie. Mike quickly parts as the referee since he is smartest, but Kelly and Dawn respects Mike's status as a detective. Mike and the team go to warehouse where Jesse is going to make a drop. May quickly catch up the Gracie is trying to rip the off and will get himself killed. A shootout begins and Mike tries to get Gracie out of there, but after fighting off the other thugs, Gracie is blown black by an explosion as impaled by a forklift. He dies before Mike can get any info out of him. Marcus gets a call from a snitch named Carvaromi, played by Evan Andy, who claims that Armando is following him and trying to kill him. He asks Marcus for help, who then tries to contact Maki, but he ignores Marcus since he sees him as a quitter. Eventually, Mike picks up and Jan Marcus is going to find Remy, but once they get to this hotel, Remy's body hits Marcus, actually Thesa's car. Mike runs into the hotel and fights Armando, managing to pull his mask off, but finding himself stunned when he sees Armando's face, he managed to get away. Mike lectures Jan's hardware at a game where the two bond, and Hauser expresses his genuine concern and care for Mike. As they are leaving, a bullet strikes Howard in the throat. Armando and Zortley are behind it. but since Mike knows he is in the pain side, he pulls Hardwood away and stays behind a car, giving Armando no clear shot. Mike tries to revive Hardwood, but he dies. After his funeral, Marcus officially decides to join Mike in catching the shooter. Mike and Martyr go off to find a shady broker named Picani Jawkins, played by Happy Ederson, for a lead on the shooter. They enter Jawkins' motor room where he is cooked out of his mind. Marcus tries to appeal to him on a personal level, but it only gets him punched hard. AMMO soon come in, with Marcus having called them, and they take Jawkins to the ground. After getting Jawkins flies, they recognize Zelu and plan to track him next. The team goes to a club where they find Zolo after attempting to arrest him. He runs for it, and the team must fight his guns. Mike and Marcus hop on a motorcycles and sidecar, with Marcus having to break his promise to God and use a machine gun to fight off the incoming thugs. They ride into the street to pursue Zatvelu, who then attempts to board a copper leader. Mike runs off and catches into the leader as well. Armando shoots Zatvelu off to get a better shot of Mike. He tells him hustle if you before Mike lets go and falls into the water. Back at headquarters, Mike has Dawn look up files based on the fresh Armando said. Mike realizes Isabel is behind all of this. He explains to Marcus that before they team up, he has deeper uncover in the Artes cartel, and he had a relationship with Isabel before he had to throw her in jail and get her husband killed. Hasta el Figo was a phrase they come up with that was nonsensical but was supposed to mean together until the frame burns out. She was also heavily into witchery, which gave her the nickname La Brocha. Miles conclude that Armando is his son and that she has been grooming him for revenge since all the victims were on the same case against the Artex family. After realizing she knows the truth, Isabel contacts Mike and arrange for him to meet her in Mexico City to end things. The team heads to Mexico for the showdown, with Isabel ordering Mike to meet them in an old palace. They engage in a fair fight against Isabel's machineries, with the AMMO officers providing their skill with guns as well as physically in Dawn's case. Marcus then shoots down a sniper copper, causing it to come crashing down to the building and starting a fire. Armando goes to fight back, but he decides to confront him as a person and reveal their parentage to Armando. He asks Isabel if it true, and she's admitted. She tries to shoot Mike, but Armando steps in the way and takes the bullet in the shoulder. Rita then shoots Isabel off the ledge, sending her plummeting into the flaming wreckage. Marcus almost falls over too, but Armando helps Mike pull him and get them out of there. Later on, the team is getting along better and they celebrate as Rita has been promoted to become the new captain. Mike and Marcus then board with baby Marcus singing the Bad Boy song to him. Before the credit roll, Mike visits Armando's in prison, offering him a chance to make up for these crimes. Armando appears to be interested. Now let's talk about the biography of the famous cast. The first one is Vanessa Hudgens. Vanessa Hudgens had an early love of show business that drove her into performing in a local musical department. Vanessa Hudgens. She got her big break in 2016 when she landed the lead role in Destiny's very popular high school musical film franchise. The actress followed with greater role in films like Saucer Punch, Spring Breakers, and The Frozen Ground. Hagen has also released 2 albums, served as a judge So You Think You Can Dance, and started to live in television production of Grease and Rent. Early life and career. Vanessa Ann Hudgens was born on December 14, 1988 in Salinas, California, to Secretary Gina Gongond and firefighter Greg Hudgens. She and her younger sister Stella grew up in San Diego. The family later moved to Los Angeles, where her constant unconditionally began to yield result. She briefly attended Orange Country High School of the Arts, but then started homeschooling. In 2003, Hudgens landed a small role in the critically acclaimed box office film 13. In 2006, she played a recurring character on The Suite Life of Zack and Cody before leading her breakthrough role as Gabriela Montez in High School Musical. Directed by Kenny Ortega in 2006, the Disney Channel's High School Musical has become a global phenomenon that only expanded with the sequels 2007 High School Musical 2 and 2008 High School Musical 3 senior year. Hagen started as a brandy and bookish Gabriel Montez with Zac Efron starring a Troy Bolton, the star athlete, as a small-town high school who falls for her a holiday crock party when her character separately transferred to his high school. Troy and Gabriella reunite the audition for the upcoming school musical. Ashley Tisdale play their nemesis, Sharpay Yvonne, who schemes to coin their chances. The quickly clean films launches the career of its cast of unknowns and they prove the way of Hagen's recording career. Film and TV Slammer. On paper, Hagen's role in 2009 Slammer doesn't sound like a bigger leap for High School Musical. She is the new kid who arrives in town and decided to put together a rock band to compete with the other band. However, Hagen told the New York Times that she was attracted by the screenplay description of her character as deadpan, introverted, and a bit of sucker. By 2011 provided more of the departure from her destiny image as she played a young woman in a mental institution who fantasized its brothel. Will Smith as Mike. Will Smith, born September 25, 1968, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, US, is an American actor and musician whose charisma and quick wit helped him transition from rap music to a successful career in acting. Smith's notable films including the blockbusters Bad Boys 1995, Independence Day 1996, and Men in Black 1997. For his work in King Richard 2021, he received the Academy Award for Best Actor. Smith has given the nickname Prince Charming in high school, which he adopted to Fresh Prince in order to reflect a more hip-hop sound when he began his musical career. He formed an alliance with soulmate and DJ Geoffrey Towns, whom he met in 1981. They began receiving DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince and released their single Girls Not Nothing But in Trouble in 1986, later followed by the album Rock the House. In 1988, the group released the groundbreaking single Present Just Don't Understand, which went on to win a Grammy Award, the first Grammy ever presented in the rap performance category. Smith's act, notable for its wide discover appeal, was sometimes characterized as light rap because of the lack of hardcore lyrics and themes in compositions. Platinum certified recording and accompanying video subsequently brought him to the attention of television producers. The television sitcom The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that began in 1990, was loosely based on Smith's real-life persona. It ran on NBC for 6 successful seasons, ending at the Stars to Cast, and during its run, Smith generated 2 Globe Award nominations and served as an executive producer for the final season. Movie starring Bad Boys, Independence Day, and Ellie. Beyond by the small screen success, Smith expanded to cinema with Where the Day Takes You 1992. His first leading role was in the film version of John Gott's successful stage play 6 Degrees of Separation 1993. The action comedy thrilled Bad Boys 1995, however, proved to be the turning point in this film career. While the movie was not a critical success, it made more than $100 million worldwide, proving Smith's star power. In 1996, starred in the SGA's top grossing movies Independence Day. He was a hit at the box office again at the next year with science fiction comedy Men in Black, for which he also recorded the Grammy-winning title song. Sequel to the film appeared in 2002 and 2012. Also in 1997, Smith released his first solo album, Big Willie Style, which included the hit Getting Jetty With It, and he followed it 2 years later with Willingham. After starring in the dramatic thriller Enemy of the State 1998, Smith continued to demonstrate his remarkable versatility as an actor. Playing an animated golf caddy in The Legend of Bagger Vance 2000, the boxer Muhammad Ali in the biopic Ali 2001, for which he received an Academy Award nomination, a call from the near future in I, Robot 2004, and a date doctor helping her romantically inspect and find love in Hitch 2005. The next year he started in The Pursuit of Happiness and his promise as a single father who overcome adversity earned his school Oscar nomination for Best Actor. In I Am Legend 2007, Smith appeared as a scientist who is perhaps as a lost human on Earth followed an epic. Hancock 2008 features Smith as a superhero trying to remove his unpopular image, and in 7 Pound 2008 he played a man seeking redemption after accidentally killing 7 people in a car accident. Later films and Oscar wins. Smith later starred alongside his son Jed in the science fiction epic After Earth 2013, which he based on an idea he received. In 2015, Smith portrays a con artist in the thriller focused on the doctor who discovered the epidemic of chronic traumatic apathy (CTE) among NFL players in confusion. In 2016, he played in the assassin Deadshot in the action thriller Suicide Squad as a grieving father in Collateral Beauty. The following year, he starred as a police officer in the Netflix action film Bright, which is set in Los Angeles inhabited by humans and the mythical creatures. Smith then was cast as a genie in the family comedy Aladdin 2019. He played two roles in Gemini Man 2019, a retired assassin as his younger clone. The latter a digitally created version of Smith in the 20s. Smith other credited from 2019 including the animation Spies in Disguise, in which he spoiled the voice of a spy who is turned into a vegan. Smith then started in Bad Boys for Life 2020, a sequel to his 1995 breakout film. In 2021, Smith took the title role in King Richard, a biopic about the father of tennis stars Serena and Venus Williams. For his performance, Smith received the Oscar for Best Actress in 2022. However, his win was probably overshadowed by an accident during the ceremony. When comedian Chris Rock made a joke about his wife, actor Jada Pinkett Smith, married in 1997, Smith took offense. He walked outside and slapped Rock. He swore at him. Smith subsequently apologized to Rock. Later in 2022, Smith started in Antoine Fuqua Emancipation, a drama set during the American Civil War. Smith played an enslaved man who flies the brutality of Conception Railroad Camp. 2 years later, he appeared in Bad Boys Ride or Die 2024. Other activities. Smith continued his recording career with the album Born to Reign 2002 and Lost and Found 2005, but they failed to match the success of his previous release. In addition, in the year 21st century, Smith served as producer for several films, including some in which he acted and which his wife helped create and produce, the sitcom All of Us 2003 to 2007. In 2008, he hosted the documentary TV series on Strange Rock about Earth. Smith's memoir Will Return with Mark Manson was released in 2021. Bad Boys 2020 Review. Martin Lawrence may not have starred in a motion picture for close to a decade, but he has a special place in my life. When I went to see his debut 2001 comedy Black Knight, it was the first time I truly laughed with abandon post 9/11. With absolute seriousness, I will be forever grateful. So while Bad Boys for Life has a completely asinine story, generic action, predictable plot, beats, moronic dialogue, and truly represents politics, I still had a good time. Lawrence, who can tell an entire story on his face, is in one action shot, must shoot, oh shit, 100 times in Bad Boys for Life. Each time it is funny from a different reason. He uses an exclamatory oh shit the way Rabbit used oils. If he was endearing as a young man, he's dolly as the age of 54 when the Bad Boys character Marcus Burnett, a new grandfather eager to retire from the Miami police force. He needs glasses for distance in and frequently intimate with his wife and hear the Bristolner calling to him. All our lives we have been bad boys, he says in one of the film's more humiliating moments. Now it's time to be a good man. Marcus' partner, however, the never married Mike Lowrey, played by Will Smith, is forever committed to putting the bodies behind bars. Oh, how are we kidding? Lowrey's modus operandi here and in the two previous Bad Boys films is to turn lawbreakers into Swiss cheese with a barrage of bullets or just blow them up. Good luck finding a film with the more lusty zeal of the militarization of the police force. The latest chapter, directed by the Belgian duo Adèle Lowrey and Bilal Fallah, comes 17 years after the last from explosion watch Mitchell Bay, who makes a cameo appearance here. The Miami PD has a new high-tech division with drones and tanks and RB Flaws camera draws over the weapons more than it does over the synthetic-clad Florida women hanging out at the nightclubs. In one scene, when our heroes arrive to go out into the field, they are forced to use rubber ammunition or ECLG bullets. Smith and the movie with him scores at such an indignity. The boy's nuclear is dead by Smith's maybe someday love interest Rita played by Paula Nance in her first English language feature, a striking and tough woman who, by Hollywood standards, is an age appropriate match. Smith is a more 10-year Norman senior, also in the squad in Vanessa Hudgens, given very little to do, and Omris Alexander Lodwin played against type as a hacker, and Charles Manton made to represent a new breed of the bad boy. The team of screenwriters Chris Brammer, Peter Craig, and Joe Carhan are clearly trying to kickstart some kind of fast and furious group dynamic, but of the out customers, only Nance and Lodwin have any pizzas. Regardless, the start of the show will always Smith and Lawrence causing at each other as they speed through traffic, bushing into things and making things blow up, apart from one shot that titles the camera on its side as if you're plying your box while laying down. The action scenes lack any real wow factor. What works through are the reaction, the screams, and the swears, the cackling between the clinging Lawrence and tough guy Smith. It's a formula too sweet and smooth to deny. But too simple dismiss Bad Boys for Life for being too far-fetched and violent is to close yourself off from its very real charms. There are plenty of cop-loving action movies that are reprehensible. Lawrence and Smith have that self-fulfilling X factor. If Bob Hope and Bing Crosby had a grenade launcher, it would end up a little like this. Bad Boys for Life is released in Australia on 16 January and in the UK and in the US on 17 January. You would have to be a darn fool to believe that Sony thought it had a good movie in Bad Boys for Life. It's being released smack dab in the middle of the cinematic wasteland that in January, the month where bad boys go to die with little fanfare. Never to be heard from again, hell, even the fresh beginning of Bel Air cartoon Spies in Discourse got released during Oscar season. Certainly you would expect a little more release date love for the third entry of a hit franchise that stars Will Smith and Martin Lawrence as darkness cops armed with comedic banter and odds of cultural damage. After all, its predecessors were released in April and July respectively and both directed by Michael Bay. Bay's conception absence added to my suspicions that there was a little study of faith in this feature. Surprisingly, Bad Boys for Life is nowhere near as bad as its opening day schedule would indicate. It is the best of the three films, offering in some odd ways a corrective to the previous installment. Unlike the original, this one finds some depth in its female characters. Unlike the second, it's not an especially wild Bisma of Farby and the Bean and Surface, whose running time felt approximately 600 hours long. This time, Detective Burnett, Martin Lawrence, and Mike Lowrey, Will Smith are more mindful of how much central damage they do, even if the latter must be constantly reminding to temper his killing. I didn't buy this kinder gentle bad boy stick for one time, but that doesn't mean I was bored. When the climax starts laying till Nova level, Melroda stopped the explosion and gunplay while openly capitalizing idea of our Gemini man, I had to admire the audacity of those choices. The films open with that speeding Porsche sequence from the trailer, with Mike and Marcus employing their usual regard for innocent while engaging in what looks like the pursuit of the latest Miami criminal. Turns out all the stunts are in the service to getting Marcus to the hospital for the birth of his granddaughter, now a grandfather or a pop-pop as he calls himself. Marcus re-evaluates his law enforcement career. Unlike his hot-head partner, he has a wife and family and wants to spend more time with them rather than the hundred of criminals he's been shooting. In the words of a far better body cop picture, Marcus realizes he's getting too old for this shit. Mike tries to change his mind. Meanwhile, something is brewing in Mexico, and I literally mean brewing. A self-proclaimed broja named Isabel Artakis, played by Kate Del Castillo, execute a gruesome Silence of the Lambs style prison break, reunite with her son Armando, played by Jacob Scipio. It's all part of the plan to murder the people who put Isabel in prison and her husband in the grave. One of those unlucky folks is that Lowrey, whom Isabel commanded her son to kill lost, who he can suffer. Castillo plays a role with maximum toughness, so much so I wish he'd been gone after our enemies itself, but the whole witch character trait had me worried that Bad Boys for Life was going to embarrassingly do for Bridgewater what Seven Slangers Mark for Death did for Voodoo. Armando executed mother wishes and enemies while clad in motorcycle gear straight out of Gemini Man. He violates our order of operation. However, after Mike was the sequence following his attack attempt to imbue the film with some real emotion stakes, and credit must be given to Lawrence for reminding us that he can convincingly navigate dramatic scenes. Screenwriters Chris Brammer, Peter Craig, and Joy Bermond used this past development to sneakily insert a reason for the aforementioned minimization of cultural damage in the action scene. The rest ensures there's still enough violence for a rather hard R rating. Followers of the series will find a new Easter eggs hidden throughout. My audience laughed heartily at the end. That unfortunately reminded me one of the worst scenes in Bad Boys 2. Despite the 25 years span between this film and the original, several cast members also returned. In addition to Smith and Lawrence, the always welcome Joe Pertolona is back as Captain Howard, the streaming police chief whose agita is exacerbated by the recklessness of his best cop. He's very funny as is Lawrence, who finds some fresh notes in the screen persona he's been playing since he debuted in House Party. Lest I forgot that, like so many the recent movies featuring all stars, this movie gives us a crew of a new angle whose knowledge of computers bumps head with the more hands-on approach of their leaders. Here is AMMO, a new unit run by Mike's old flame Rita and featuring Vanessa Hudgens from High School Musical and Spring Breakers. Their use of drones and hacking is mocked by the old-school police officer, so it's only a matter of time before Ammo is forced to use actual ammo to get their jobs done. While Ammo prepares for battle, Rena and Mike generate some believable room-cum sparks. Perhaps the only surprise in Bad Boys for Life is a desire to embrace on is an emotional stake of Mike and Marcus, not in the superficial buddy-buddy romantic who you'd expect, but in a synchronous way that is kind of putting when you remember how base films avoided any semblance of warmth. Dare I say the directors Adil Erbi and Bilal Flaw steal a page from the Old Man Lamet's playbook with beyond pains and glory, and the Irishman and the Smith and Lawrence do their best to try and pull it off. I had a too much reaction to these attempts to fully analyze Mike and Marcus, but your league may vary here. If nothing else, I appreciate the effort. But I didn't appreciate what the ridiculous Marvel style post-credit sequence that set up a potential Bad Boys 4, The Return of Thanos, or something like this. What about all the talk of one last time between Mike and Marcus? We didn't time this, let alone the next, but I disagree. While I am marginally not recommending this one, I'll let you in a little secret. If there was a cable at 3 am, I'd watch the hell out of it. The world didn't need another Bad Boys movie, but the people who make Bad Boys movie need another Bad Boys movie. So now we're here, Bad Boys for Life, in which a somewhat eggless Will Smith and an increasingly paunched Martin Lawrence surprise their lows as victory off the handle Miami cops Mike Lowrey and Marcus Burnett. 17 years after Bad Boys 2, a movie that ended with some launches a whole ass Russian invasion of Cuba in order to kill a drug lord and save Gabriella's union. The question hanging over the third entry is how much our changing times will affect the ethos and aesthetic of a franchise known primarily for putting Michael Bay, he of the extra tracking shots and the gonzo car chase and the slow-mo adorning flags and the lustful lingering shots of heavy-duty weaponry on the map, and this is indeed a somewhat kinder, gentle Bad Boys less properly offensive, less extremely, but still basically the sum collection of stylish New York made playable by a duo of likable stars with good chemistry. B is not helming this time. He does give his blessing, however, via a cameo appearances as a wedding MS. Instead, the director are the blatant duo of Adil Larbi and Bilal Flaw, who do a fine job adapting the colorful, heart-painting Bad Boys house style, whooping over Miami, carrying across crowding nightclubs and staging action scenes with maximum delirium, while keeping the raffle revenge narrative clinging along the time Isabel drives a Mexican co-con experience in the dugout and the window of the deceased drop kingpin, sends her son Armando to Miami to unearth a breath stash of money and execute a group of local officials including Mike, a payback for a husband's death. Armando actually succeeds in gunning down Mike while an hero lies in the hospital fighting for his life. Family man Marcus promises God that if this partner pulls through, he put no more violence in the world. That Solomon now become a problem when Mike does all through and the two of them go on the hunt for the attempted assassin. Rest assured that plenty of violence is put in the world over the due course of the movie. Back in the day, the bad boys movies were attempts to push the tried and tried cop body thrilled into increasingly more ridiculously and offensive territory. They were emergencies and silly and morally doggy in ways that even over the top hits like Lethal Weapon wouldn't dare much. In the intervening years, however, their thunder has been stolen by other series like the Fast and the Furious franchise, which are often dumber and crazier, but more wholesome and responsible movies that better fit and current moment of sensory numbers and social hypersanity. Bad Boys for Life initially borrow a few pages from the book, and then it borrows a lot of pages from the book, not to mention a couple of chapters from Will Smith's more recent action disaster, Jiminy Man. It began with the pro forma breathing between new grandpa Marcus and dissolved bachelor Mike about when the latter's going to settle down and how they are too old for this shit and so on, but eventually goes in all sort of bizarre new familiar attraction. And shockingly is better for it. Most of Bad Boys for Life is slick, serviceable junk, but it springs to life in the last 30 or so minutes. A new revelation, I won't say, but not only gives the story some newly complicated more stakes and narrative predictability, but also free the otherwise mobs Lawrence spark up and start talking gloriously shit to this co-star. I wish I could quote some lines here, but they'd be spoilers. Are really in night and day, even the beginnings of the action changes from the start's earlier frantic, pragmatic cuts to lengthy hand-held shots that they are still not particularly original to make for a different, more confident movie. Overall, Bad Boys for Life is probably a wash, but it ends so well. I know I find myself an entirely opposite to the idea of the fourth Bad Boy entry. What ya gonna do? Danny Butterman, Nick Frost's character in Hot was convinced Siemens Nicholas Agel that Bad Boys 2 is the pensable of modern action cinema. Sorry, Danny, but you were miles off. Michael's Bay Bald of Bombas is about an absolute executive in coherent and exclusively emotionally coherent as action movies get. Less than this shit got real, more than just got real shit. So 17 years on, the prospect of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence returning for one last go at loud squads and even louder one-liner was a frankly unifying one. However, would be a mostly distant memory replaced by hotspot Belgian director Duarte Larrabee and Bilal Flaw. Bad Boys for Life is something of a blast, funny, occasionally surprising, and self-aware enough to challenge the mindset of the first two movies. Perhaps reflecting their divergent status over the last decade, having moved away from acting for a while. This is Lawrence's first starring role since the third Big Mama's House film in 2011. The focus here is squarely on Smythe Lowrey, who finds himself between the crosshair of a generally managing villain, Jacob Scibbo. Not only is Lowrey being challenged physically, he is consequently being challenged to do something about his flashy, superficial but ultimately empty lifestyle, then called out on his and by extension the franchise toxic, meaninglessly bullshit. Bad Boys for Life 2020. There's also a fair amount of patent too old for this shit material. There are jokes about being Smith generated about Lawrence needing glasses and the one-point Mike and Marcus take to the street in a motorcycle sidebar combo that basically make it the most expensive and explosion episode of the last of the summer wine ever. Of course, much of the politician about trying to be a good man instead of the bad boys, it justified for the obligatory gun-tooting, bullet-spanning climax, but even if had cake and eats it too, it's refreshing to see a movie like this even stop to think about the calories. And in another interesting move, those action scenes are surprisingly easy to follow. With Adil and Bilal, that's how they build. First name only Bad Boys for Life, just running based beloved copy, quick edits in favor of longer beats and clearly established spatial geography. Frankly, you can tell what's going on. Perhaps that's a deliberate move to reflect the advanced years of its protagonist, but is blessed relief. Will Smith carrying the movie, it's me Lawrence freed for the any desire to look cool, getting off a car in slow-mo, gets to have a grand old time as the tension reflecting comic relief. It's still early in 2020, but one lost in the movie line promises to be one of the year's best. Sadly, there's a little room for the new faces, including Vanessa Hudgens, Alexander Logan, and Paula Nunes as super cops who find themselves butting heads at least as first, but Lowrey and Burnett to make much of an impact still. This is clearly a revigerated franchise with one eye on the future, so some of them might get a chance down the line. Maybe next time Smith and Lowrey can scream downhill in a bathtub. Bad Boys for Life is the sort of the thing I suspect we are going to be seeing more and more of the sequel to a long-run franchise that may now be all too obvious cash grab and fusion of the movie star brand enhancement. But doesn't play like one. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence being their A game, they never let us feel they are going through the motion. The mark may be standard issue, but they hit them with fury and flair. The buddy movie as we know it came into being in 1969 when it was kicked off by Becky Costy and the Sundance Kid. Over the next decade, films like The Sting and Thunderbolt and Lightfoot become a new kind of bromatic cap, exciting and even dramatic in a loose, jostling double spiritual way in the 80s and the era of 48 HRS. And the Lethal Weapons films, the genre evolved into a cracksucker breed of racially hostile action cop comedy. Amp Formula found that was in its way starting to vary around the ages. By the time of Bad Boys in 1995, it had become an almost self-referential form of epinism on the now played like carbonated successor for the 80s. Produced by Dom Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, Bad Boys was Michael's Bay's first film as a director, and just here that can make you wistful with nostalgia for the Hollywood that existed before Michael Bay. 8 years later, the film saw a sequel, Bad Boys 2, also directed by Bay, which was more of the same in a way that made it seem like quintessence of the movie that no one really needed. So what does this make the reuniting of Smith and Lawrence as middle-aged cop with 25 years of grudges and tough love between the Bad Boys for Life? In its grabby opening sequence, the film invites us to experience it as a throwback to the 90s. The nostalgia equivalent of a double stuffs and ice cream cake, Miami Narcotics detectives Mike Lowrey and Marcus Burnett are racing around. It's Mike Glunty that Poch doing hairpin turns in the sun. Actually, Mike is racing, Marcus is getting ready to throw up, and lost of the room for Bad Boys banter so corny it's camp. To a crowd of white people on a beach, we are not just black, we are cops too. We'll pull ourselves over later. If That's All movie was a copy of a copy impaled with mocks about and Moonlight Cocoa Bean eye of drying talks, rest assured it's got plenty of those. Then it might have gotten old first, but Bad Boys for Life, directed by Adil Larbi and Bilal Flah, the Mokoran part Belgian filmmaking team who built themselves as Adil and Bilal, is in many ways a shredder package than they'd expect. It's been 17 years since Bad Boys 2, and what you feel in the music of the new movie isn't just the old smoothy good cop, bad cop routine, but the shadow of presence of the blockbuster series that has only back then in, just coming into being the Fast and the Furious films with their genre in a Max Master and Overdriver approach. Bad Boys for Life is a lavishly conventional cops movie and a comedy of cranky fast camaraderie. It's a mediation on the fine wine element of its two veteran stars, a Mexican drug cartel thrilled in the vein of the Scorpio films with a wildly personal twist. It's an over-the-top Bruckheimer highway chase and genetic gun and explosion hijink blowout that at work at all are testament to how even an intermittent rotted in this much formula antagonists and can now seems unconforgettable old-fashioned. Mike and Marcus for much of the first half are crossing an opposite path. Marcus slower and more white-faced than before he became a grandfather. The two are speeding to the hospital in the opening scene and the wants to nothing so much as retire. Whereas Mike, still lean and mean, is a solo vessel who plans to chase crocs for the rest of the life. It's a purpose and his high. What brings the two back together in Isabel Kate del Castillo, the wife of the Mexican drug lord they put away years ago, and her hotshot son Armando Jacobsquio. The two have devoted themselves to the vengeful cause of assassinating everyone involved in the case. Judge, franchise investigator, and Mike. Armando, who is doing the killing, is extremely good at it. Claude is competent as act sniper, and he's like Brosley and knives. He gets to Mike fairly quickly, wanting him with a round of bullets, then pass the video of the attack online. The developer lends the movie a surprise touch of gravity, at least for a Bad Boys caper, it literalizes the thing. Mike and Marcus are both confronting and in Mike's case fighting that by the time you reach this age. No matter who you are, you know on same grand level and that dates are numbered. Mike is eager to chase the attackers all by himself, an idea that Joe's put Lance's cap Howard is not thrilled about. But circumstances bring Marcus back into the mix along with special tactical political squad known as Ammo, led by Mike's old friend Rita, who Marcus keeps insisting that Mike was a dumbass for dropping. He's right. They represent law enforcement through sometimes being firepower with the accounts of why Mike is so immense around them. Charles Milton as the Ammo member who beats Mike as a taunts of Grandpa was two-star Prentice. Will Smith acts with his gold fast break Beyonce and he looks ageless but he plays Mike with a harder light that before that gives the film his teeny semblance of emotion stakes. At first you may think that Martin Lawrence has lost his mojo but he is just biding his time as the film goes on. Marcus comes alive and Lawrence teases his partner with a clinical knowingness that Stry is the perfect martini. There's a third act reveal that works well, upping the stakes or at least giving us something real to fasten and amid all the flashing gymnastic blisters of the climax. Bad Boys for Life should find an audience because it's built on its procedure to become something that's easy to give into. It's a high-powered trash with a slight human touch. Bad Boys for Life director Adil Lowrey and Bilal Flaw has revealed that they shot numerous endings for the Bad Boys prequel. Talking to Digital Spy for the home release of Bad Boys for Life, Lowrey and Flaw spoke about the different ways the movie could have ended, including one epic alternative take on the climax. But to go into the different spoilers await, so look away now if you have not seen the movie yet. Bad Boys for Life climax has an emotional showdown between Michael Lawrence, Will Smith, Isabel Ortiz, Kate Del Castillo, and Armando Arquez, Jacob Scipio, who has just discovered that Mike is his father. Isabel accidentally shoots Armando, aiming for Mike, but she is killed before she can shoot Mike. Luckily, Armando is not fatally injured and is sent to prison. The reveal that Armando was Mike's son was always in the script, but Flaw explained that the ending changed a lot from the original version of the read. We had all these different endings and then with the editing, we used test audience. We always try to have the feedback at the options to see which ending was the best and we got elements of every ending and put them all together, he noted. Lowrey added he didn't know how to wrap it up necessarily, so that's why we do try multiple versions. We did a lot of different versions, and one of those ended up to be a fetus of the directors, which saw Isabel kill herself and try to take out Mike in the process. When he sees that all is lost, she wants to jump into the fire willingly and she wants to take Mike Lowrey with her because she thinks the son is dead and let's all die together, Lowrey explained. That was a version that was pretty epic and a pretty Greek tragedy. It was too much maybe, but we'll all never know. It's lucky they didn't kill off more people through its an alternative ending as it leads to a credit scene where Mike visited Armando in prison, setting up a potential storyline for Bad Boys 4. While the directors might not be officially involved in the fourth movie yet, they did think about all different directions you could go with the next movie. You also imagine like in the Fast and Furious movies as if they are in another countries for a big part of the movie which happens then and stuff like that. What if there's a big conflict between both of them, Lowrey outlined. I think that there's a lot of potential with the development and other characters. You start thinking if they have an even bigger part in the fourth movie, so all of these elements were playing in the back of our head and we were shooting. Flaw and Lowrey also spoke to Digital Spy about how the movie had to kill off Captain Howard. Bad Boys for Life is now playing in the theaters. 2020 at the box office will be known as the year of asterisk, with virtually every known measured and metrics for box office performance being completely through the recalibrated. These were the words of comic senior media elastic Paul Tech speaking to CNN in October 2020. At the time, the industry was countering with the month-long global shutdown with movie theater and live sport as the pandemic dragged on. Yes, very little released in 2020 will always come with an asterisk, but even with that, one movie had to come out on top during Hollywood's last year. The movie was Bad Boys for Life. Action directed Alexander Michael B. Hellman 1995's Bad Boys and 2003's Bad Boy 2, with the first film ranking as a big success and the sequel somehow hampered by its very large budget. More on that is in a bit. Still, after several years, Sony decided to officially move forward with the third installment in the franchise in 2009 with Peter Craig 2, an initial version of Bad Boys 3. It would be more than a decade before the film would actually come to fruition. Entirely by accident, Will Smith and Mark Lawrence's third go-around as Mike Lowrey and Marcus Burnett would secure his place in the cinema history as Hollywood's biggest movie during the industry's worst year ever. In honor of the release of Bad Boys Ride or Die next weekend, we're looking back at the Bad Boys for Life. We'll go over why the movie took so long to happen in the first place, how a pair of relatively unknown directors ended up stepping in for Bay, how they managed to make a certified blockbuster on a sub $100 million budget, what happened when the movie hit theater, what happened shortly after it hit theaters, and what lesson we can learn from it several years removed. Let's dig in it. As in often case, Bad Boys 3 found itself stuck in development hell for several years, but with screenwriter and Cameron Grant and Will Smith's busy schedule as one of the most in-demand leading men in the business, it proved challenging to have all of the pieces come together at the time. Even so, then a decade after Bad Boys 2 hit theater, optimism pre-mistake. I believe so. Just Lawrence said in 2014 when asked by Conan's brief if Bad Boys 3 was still going to happen, I just talked to producer Jerry Bruckheimer yesterday and he said it's real. We are working on the script. They are getting close. It all looks good. Earlier the same year, Bruckheimer explained that so much of came time to bad timing. We'll get Sony real excitement to make the movie and Will Smith is off doing 2 movies and then we will come back and back real excited about it and Sony will say, well, maybe it's not the time for this, and then Right Along come out and was a big hit and now they are all excited to make the movie, but Will is off doing something else. As Marcus Burnett might say, just got real when Sony announced 2015 with both Bad Boys 3 and Bad Boys 4 had lockdown release dates in 2017 and 2019 respectively. 6 years after the sequel officially entered development, the study was doubling down. Be that what it may, some things called like Lawrence speaking in 2015 caused debate on the sequel ever coming in this fruition. I don't think we're going to get one, not the way everything's turning out. Will is off getting another movie and I don't think it's going to happen. Finally getting Bad Boys 3 on the green screen. At the time, Smith was coming off Suicide Squad, which was a surprisingly big hit and was filming Bright for Netflix. The actor had also been cast as Jandy in the live-action Aladdin remake and Gemini Man and the animated Spice and Disguise, and this to-do list Smith was busy as ever. But as long lost, the sequel was given the green light by Sony in October 2018 under the title Bad Boys for Life. Joe Corhan, the Grey, had at one point been attacked to write and directed the film. He was given a screenplay credit in the version that made his screen. However, Corhan ended up vacating the director's chair over creative differences. In 2019, the filmmaker said Smith didn't want to make the version of the film. He wrote, I love Will, he's a great guy, I just know myself and I thought he was doing at that point was the law of diminishing returns. It was a service the story I was really excited about telling that the studio had greenlit, and again this is to throw shade at Will. Is your face on the poster, is your name on the poster, and you need to do things the way you want them done. Cornyn added at the ending of the script that one of the best endings I have ever written in any movie. Part of the story remained, but the one who got sees the wife and son of a drug lord seeking revenge, with Mike Lowrey caught in the mix. Mike and Marcus team up with a special technical squad named Ammo to bring them to justice, with Cornyn no longer in the director's chair and Bay busy making 6 Underground for Netflix. Sony turned to a pair of reluctant unknown in the form of Ardell Larby and Bilal Fallah to finally get this project across the finish line, making Behane on a budget. Larby and Fallah has directed music video and episodic TV Before this is fast far away the biggest project of this career up to that point. In the years since they have handled several other blockbuster level projects including the new infamous Cantal Belgrade movie for DC, but at the time they had to convincingly fill the shoe once occupied by Michael B. helming a movie with one of the biggest stars in history. Fortunately, they had learned to make a lot out of a little in the past and rise to the challenge. We learned in Belgium how to remake our movies bigger than they are. Flaws at an interview with film around the release of Bad Boys for Life in 2019. We had like $1.2 million or $3 million, but you want to make it look as epic as possible and international as possible, and the use of color really helped so much. RB built on that, saying that much of epic action in the film as we see it was a combination of great cinematography and creativity. In the end, they managed to make the film for $90 million, which is a whole at loss, the most modern blockbuster, especially considering a salary that Will Smith commands. Not to mention that Bay spent $130 million on the action epic that was Bad Boys 2, well over a decade earlier. Despite the relative limitation, the Duke crafted his crowd pleaser that looked bigger than it was. Familiar faces like Joe Patano, Captain Howard returned alongside new faces like Vanessa Hudgens, Paula Nunez, Jacob Sakipio, and even a cameo from DJ Khaled. Ultimately, the audience were turning up based on their level of interest in seeing Smith and Lawrence reunite after all these years. And it was more than a bit of gamble, as Bad Boys 2 made $273 million worldwide back in 2003. Barely doubt its hawking budget would movie gears still care. 17 years later, it turns out yes, they absolutely did. Will Smith had been associated with summer blockbuster for years. Bad Boys for Life hit theater on January 17, 2020. The meaning of that is that it was facing very little by the way of major competition, save for Robert Downey Jr. Dollars, which thankfully for Sony bombed. RB and Fallen's big budget debut opened to $60.5 million, easily thinking to top spot of the weekend. Then number grew to $73 million when accounting for the Martin Luther King holiday. The number far exceeded projection, which set the film up for one heck of a run. It held the top spot for 2 weekends, easily finding off Gretel and Hansel and the Gentleman. It would not stand the crown until Birds of Prey entered the fold. By then, it hardly mattered. Bad Boys for Life finishes its run with $206.3 million domestically to go with 2020 plus $2 million internationally for a grand total of $426.5 million. It and the result became the biggest domestic January release ever, topping Paul Blart Mall Cop. Sony seemed to know that they had it a hitter. They quickly set about developing Bad Boys 4 just as the third installment was hitting theater. Unfortunately, the party would be somewhat short-lived as a dark cloudy was looming. It not to be too romantic, but changed Hollywood forever. The pandemic shut down Hollywood. When it perhaps most impressive about Bad Boys for Life that is made the money it made even through its theoretical run was cut a little short. By early March, the world was reckoning with the relative of COVID-19. With the pandemic taking hold, it becomes crystal clear that that was going to impact the movie business greatly, as people are not supposed to be gathered together in close quarters. Movies lacked no time to die were delayed, with many other big movies to follow. Soon thereafter, theaters all around the country were forced to shut down doors for an infinitive amount of time. Films such as Sonic the Hedgehog and The Invisible Man go to mostly finished their run in theater, while others such as Pixar's Onward were cut hungrily short. Visually, no other major Hollywood movies would arrive until Russell Crowe's Unhanged and, more importantly, Christopher Nolan turned it much later in the year. For much of 2020, it was movies like The Watched, keeping the box office and live sport mostly thanks to drive-in theater. Meanwhile, with theater closed down, Universal Pictures released Troll Walk Tour as the first premium VOD movie ever, kicking off a trend that the industry is still reckoning with that day. Because of that, all the big movie that was supposed to arrive in 2020 didn't come out until 2021 or 2022. That being the case, Bad Boys for Life finished the year after the highest grossing film domestically, the only movie that made more globally than the Chinese blockbuster The 800 for $61.4 million and the Japanese rhyme Demon Slayer, the movie Mugen Train for $53.2 million. Even though there was always be asterisk attached, this movie has a torch a significant place in cinema history. Looking back, even just a small handful of years later, the movie's success is downright fascinating to consider. Had Sony released it even a few weeks later, its fate might have been grim. Had they set it for a summer like a classic Will Smith blockbuster for old, it would have been pushed to 2021 and might have had a tough time finding audience as the box office struggled then, and it is still struggling now to finding a sure footing in the aftermath of the pandemic. In reflection, the best thing Sony did was not to be stubborn and say our Will Smith franchise movie must come out in the summer. January feels like an oft-ignored month that can be fertile ground of the right film. It's in the month that allowed Taken to become a hit and turned Liam Neeson into an action star. This was the exact right time at the right time. It would be easy to imagine a studio feeling the need to fix muscle and release this in summer just because that has traditionally been done. Instead, Sony liquor smart as held and benefited from a lack of director competition. Beyond that, it's good that Sony waited for the right version of Bad Boys 3 and the right filmmaker to make it happen, especially since the decision gave us a new, exciting director due with can hopefully churn out hits for years. More than that, they managed to make this movie on a much lower budget which benefited everyone in the end. It one had ballooned to $200 million. It is so often the case these days. We'd be thinking about it very differently. Instead, we get to watch Mike and Marcus take at least one more ride together. Everybody wins. Sometimes all you need for a good laugh are the right two people. The comedy duo is a pop culture staple and an archetype with dark roads with a few variations. One member of the duo is usually straight lackeys and the other is outraged. Sometimes the dynamic about is one upping each other's weight, going back to act like Roller and Hardy and Abbott and Castillo, who made successful transition from stage to motion pictures. Every generation had this familiar headliner. Baby Boomer saw more variety in their comedy team with the smoothest bother blending music into their stage act. They helped set the standard for viewer comedy duos such as a Sony and Cher. However, not everyone needed an extra talent to get laughed. Mary Taylor Mora and Edie Astor thrive on the charisma, and together they brought the comedy to do into the modern era. Today we had a wide variety of comedy appearing on the big screen from iconic one-off to regular team-ups. The only we don't take the exclusive of the Tina Fey and Amy Poehler personally. They're the best friends with all the wishes we know, but alongside of Saturday Night they rarely appears together. The Bad Boys for Life ending while Will Smith Mike Lowrey confront his past while Mal Trotton Marcus Burnett decided about his future. And together they put an end to an extensive killing spree that sets up Bad Boys Ride or Die, coming 17 years after Michael Bay's Bad Boys 2. Adil Radby and Bilal Farah successfully revitalized the long-dormant franchise with Bad Boys for Life. The movie begins with Marcus' daughter having a baby boy with her longtime boyfriend. Marcus looks back on his life, particularly his life of violence, and decides to retire. Meanwhile, an assassin shoots and nearly kills Mike in revenge for a case Mike worked on decades period, which resulted in the imprisonment of the shooter's mother, Isabel Ertas. There was also a bigger connection between Isabel, Mike, and the shooter, Armando Armas. Marcus reached as the fold for one last mission with his best friend. Mike and Marcus head to Mexico for a final confrontation with Isabel and Armando, joined by members of Miami PD's new MO Advanced Miami Metro Operation Initiative. The Bad Boys for Life ending sees Mike and Marcus travel to Mexico City to bring justice to Isabel and Armando. With the backup of Miami former AMMO members, Mike must meet Isabel inside Hidalgo Place using himself as bait. However, when Marcus is captured and AMO survivors equipment is knocked out and disable ammo infiltrate that building and shortcut occurs between Mike, Marcus, Ammo and Isabel and Armando's henchmen. Isabel and Armando try to escape by boarding a helicopter, but when Marcus shoots the pilot, the helicopter crashes into the building and explodes on the first floor. In all climates with the fight between Mike and Armando, with Marcus quickly taking out Isabel in the room above. Mike needs Marcus' advice earlier in the film to penetrate Saul with his heart. Rather than simply shoot and kill Armando, Mike tries to bypass the usual violence. He doles out and makes a last-ditch attempt to show Armando that he isn't the person Armando thought he was, or the person Isabel made him out of to be. And it worked as Armando stood in the way of Isabel shooting Mike and was in return wound himself. Thanks to Mike and Marcus, Armando survives and was later imprisoned in Miami for the numerous murder. Mike was not just the person who put Isabel away over 15 years ago, and he also broke her heart and betrayed her in her eyes. He was a traitor who abandoned her, seeing him suffer after all these years, and that when she wanted putting a bullet in him would be mercy according to her. But when it ultimately came time to kill Mike, Isabel wanted Armando to be the one to do it and the one to tell the other secret message. Hasta el fuego, everything would click for Mike at the moment before his death. On the surface, Isabel's plan was simple yet cruel. She wanted Mike to feel the pain she felt in her years in prison. To carry out her pain in full, Isabel made her son believe he was getting revenge for his father, who died in jail as a result of Mike's investigation. She wanted everyone associated with the case, from the CSI investigator to the case judge, dead, and the Mike dying last. It was revenge for the Airtel cartel and personal revenge for Isabel. The final person to die had to Mike's closest mentor, Captain Howard's death in Bad Boys for Life. Shortly before his death, Captain Howard repeated to Mike what Marcus was telling him for months: retire. It was clear at the point that Mike was not the bulletproof person he thought he was. The legend of Mike Lowrey was slowly fading, and if it continues to push himself into the investigation, there would be consequences. Someone would die. Unfortunately, the someone was Captain Howard, who was not only part of the initial investigation into the Airtel cartel but also the person responsible for setting Mike on his path. Mike was like a son to Captain Howard, so forcing the son to watch his father figure die in front of him was the lowest Mike could go. Captain Howard was the final domino to fall before Isabel was ready to have Mike killed. Before Bad Boys for Life, the only aspect of Mike Lowrey backstory leading up to the first Bad Boy movie was he graduated from the police academy and become an narcotics officer with Marcus Burnett. Bad Boys for Life revealed Captain Howard pulled Mike out of the academy early and gave him an undercover assignment within the Airtel cartel. He becomes Isabel's driver and ultimately fall in love with her. They plan to run away together, but when Mike realizes she was a cold-blooded killer, he returned her in along with the rest of the cartel member. Hasta el Fuego is something that Mike and Isabel come up with together. When Mike is recovering from his gunshot wound and Rita confronted him at his home, he uttered the phrase Hasta el Fuego. Rita didn't know what it meant, but Mike used it and executed to want to get back into the field and solve the investigation himself. It's literally that Hasta el Fuego is something that Mike and Isabel came up with together and would say to another one, almost like a promise to each other no matter what. Hasta el Fuego has no direct translation in Spanish, but the closest meaning is until the fire. Hasta el Fuego broke Mike and Isabel's story full circle by promising they would be together until the fire. They fulfilled that meaning to the letter, with Rita shooting Isabel and her falling into the fire and dying at the bottom of Hidalgo Place. Isabel made Mike Lowrey into the clothes and sport car loving person he is, but by giving him a son and indirectly forcing him to take responsibility for this action, she also inadvertently turned him into the person Marcus wanted him to be, one willing to settle down and let go for the violence. Bad Boys 3 twist explain. They planned to run away together before Mike gave up Isabel in his investigation. He would give up everything for her, and he would give up everything for him, but Mike didn't know she was a month pregnant. Their son was 8 months later while she was in prison, and their son was Armando. Mike put their twist together when Armando said Hasta el Fuego. Letting Armando loose on Mike was putting justice for Isabel. Although Mike didn't have the time or the means to have a DNA test done instantly, he knew Armando was his son because Isabel Husband, the leader of the air test cartel, was sterile. Upon coming to his realization, Mike thinks of Armando as a vision of himself who went bad, but in reality, they are both alike in many ways. They are both drawn into violence but long for the father son relationship they never had. Mike didn't know Armando was his son, and the person who Armando taught was his father died in the prison when he was only a child. Mike saw this as an opportunity to be a father figure to Armando. Even though Armando committed several murders, including killing Captain Hardware, Mike saw this as an opportunity to be a father figure to Armando and help him face justice and atone for his crimes. This is perhaps why Armando's immediate reaction to Isabel pointing her gun at Mike was to step in front of the barrel and take the bullet himself. Mike's decision was not national, but while he told Marcus on the way to Mexico that he planned to kill his son, he just could not do it when the moment presented itself. By finding out Broken Glasses was the dealer who supplied Armando with the custom-made P90 bullets, Mike proved that this old-fashioned detective way still worked. But when he was into the department to report this finding, M already knew about it. In a roundabout way, Bad Boys for Life highlight the benefit of old school tactics and the advantage of state-of-the-art technology. Mike and Marcus were saved numerous times by members of ammo and their fancy equipment, while they would not pretendly taken as the reminder of the elder Carter by themselves as they had done with other criminal organizations in Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2. It's obvious that there are packs in the working with such an outfitted team. For course, M got shot down at the point in the film, but the Rita as the new police captain, it makes sense she would establish ammo and all of its members. Without them, Mike have not been able to follow through on his hunch that Isabel was behind everything, that Armando was his son. The first two Bad movies were primarily about Marcus and his family, so it makes sense that Bad Boys for Life would flip the script and focus on Mike's family, even though he didn't know it was his family until the final act. While Mike was violence he caused in his career as a police officer and detective, that's why he promised God he would not bring any more violence into the world if God Mike given a one chance. Bad Boys for Life title is not just part of Mike and Marcus' age-long mantra, but it's also core that they live by. However, Marcus had an epiphany during this, and Mike's car chase with Zalvo. He was essentially vessel of course. As a detective, he was protecting the world. So while he could choose not to harm anyone, it was in his nature to be a bad boy for life. Leaving this best friend along almost caught Mike killed, and that's not something he was willing to content with in retirement. Bad Boys for Life's title is not just part of the Mike and Marcus age-old mantra, but it's also code that they lived by and will continue to live by. The Bad Boys 3 ending leaves a plot open for the sequel Bad Boys Ride or Die, but of the death of Captain Howard played a massive role in the new movie after Howard died. He is in short of being a dirty cop, and then the police who framed him tried to bring Mike and Marcus into it, making them wanted them. This led to the formation of the ammo team in the movie. They reunite in the sequel as expected, as they were there to help Mike and Marcus clear their names and find the real bad guys. However, the biggest connection between the Bad Boys 4's ending and Ride or Die came with the post credit scene in For Life. They saw Mike going to Armando and asking him if he wanted to do some good to reduce his sentences. While that is not what happened in the movie, Mike does go and help Armando escape when he realizes that the people who are gunning from him will also go after his son. Armando then help his dad again, and when the movies end, Mike lets his son escape to live in peace. The Bad Boys for Life end credits offer up some tantalizing storyline for the franchise future. Mike Lowrey, played by Will Smith, and Marcus Burnett, played by Martin Lawrence, returned in the long-awaited sequel, directed by Adele Derby and Bilal Flaw. Bad Boys for Life, through the true partner lives into Dallas when a master assassin guns down Mike. After a 6-month recovery, Mike and Marcus team up with a group of tech-loving malicious cops called Advanced Miami Metro Operations (AMMO) to track down and stop the ruthless assassin. Things got complicated, however, when, in a massive Bad Pass for Life plot twist, Mike realizes that the assassin's Armando, played by Jacob Scarrow, is actually his biological son. While deep undercover in a Mexican drug cartel before he was partnered with Marcus, Mike had an affair with drug lord Isabel Atticus, who is now using her son to do the cartel's dirty work. At the end of the movie, Armando saves Mike's life even though doing so many sacrifices, freedom and going to prison. What happened in Bad Boys for Life mid-credit scene? It should come as a no surprise that Armando going to prison would it be the last the franchise would see of him. In the first Bad Boys for Life mid-credit scene, Mike visits his son in prison. Armando says that they accept the fact that he has built up a debt and needs to pay for his crimes. Mike then offers Armando an opportunity to pay off some of the debt and he asks if he is interested. Armando looks at the folder Mike is carrying and agrees. It seems to be the perfect setup for the sequel. Bad Boys for Life also has a second mid-credit scene. Thrice one is more than love than a sequel setup. It's essentially a deleted scene from the movie's third act. After Marcus learned that the Mike had a son with Isabel and is quickly wrathfully scolding him for it, the two are on a plane and unfortunately nearby passenger pulled up in a Marcus rapping session when Marcus turns to him and asks, "Would you a witch without a?" What could Bad Boys for Life mid-credit scene mean for the future? Bad Boys for Life first end credit scene set up a future sequel where Mike and Armando work together as a father and son team. The tail of the case as the deal that's on the table are left weak, which means the Bad Boys 4 could go in a lot of different directions, with Mike and Marcus now leading Amo and Armando on ahead to give him insight into the criminal mind and Freya use some of his lethal assassin skills. There's a clear setup for another sequel. By adding in Armando and the Amo team, the movie franchise could end up roaming into something like Fast and Furious. Given that Armando only learned the truly about his father at the end of the Bad Boys for Life, it would be interesting to see how their relationship developed into the course of the next movie and what is the original Bad Boy deal of Mike and Marcus get up to next. The idea that is by adding in Armando with the Amo team and the movie franchise could end up morphing into something like Fast and Furious with the largest cast of characters and bigger adventure down the road. How Bad Boys Ride or Die pick up on this scene? Bad Boys Ride or Die perfectly follows the Bad Boys for Life end credit scene with a small alteration. The movie follows up on Armando killing off a Mike and Marcus' beloved Captain Howard in the last movie. However, he has posthumously been framed as a dirty cop, and Howard leaved a message for Mike and Marcus that lets them know there are moles in the department and those moles run as deep as the FBI, DAE, and the prison system. Mike brings Armando back into the story when they try to protect him. As a result, Mike and Marcus comes fugitive as well. Armando was also working for the cartel and killed however in order for his mother. Now the moles in the law enforcement agencies claim the Howard, Mike and Marcus all work for the same cartel as dirty cops. This leads to Mike and Marcus working with their team AMMO and Armando, who believes that he can identify who is framing his dad. In the end, Armando finally pays his dues and possibly gets a fresh start in the Bad Boys Ride or Die final scene. A satisfying action film required only the thing action as long as the violence is probable and incessant. We accept all kind of garbage and celebrate the Burham in spite of plot holes, shoddy performance and gross mortality. If an action film also happened to supply charismatic puppet to charge through a gauntlet of explosion and car faces, then all the better. We'll grant that film a sequel or two. It may have taken 20 years, but Bad Boys for Life and it templates its lofty trilogy and square a whole leaf for box office in the process. In his review, our own Rob Hunter Knight at the film of a terrific body comedy with heart and kick-ass action. Few things such as the thing was possible, especially since Michael Bay's signature direction is noticeable absent, but Will Smith and Martha Lawrence carried the day and even had the stones to leave room for more. They had a good time too and are seemingly preparing audience for Bad Boys Forever. Hopefully it won't take another decade plus to deliver, although the idea of generic reunion is appealing. This is already our action movie before trilogy after all. The trilogy keeps with one hell of a revelation. The sexy, sulky, predatory, faltering behavior of Smith's detective Mike Lowrey has resulted in his greatest nemesis. Once upon a time, when he got down with the drug lord's lady, they pressed upon of destruction. Lowrey has a kid and he has raised on his mother bloodlust for revenge. Armando Armas, Jacob's Scipio, wants to make his mother proud, and to do so, he muttered his way through the Miami Police Department, including blasting a few rounds into Lowrey's mind section. Father and son come to blows, also vast floors, shattered glass, and helicopter rage. The film obviously doesn't belong to Armando, so the kid doesn't get the way, but his biological disclosure messes with his head as much as it does his father nagging. When Bad Mama Isabel goes to penetrate his one-time lover heart with a bullet, Armando jumps in the way. Mike's new girlfriend Rita unheals his old one. Honest right in the world, Armando survives his injuries, but has to face cold prison bar where he can forgive her, stern Rammers. Or how about this? Armando simply stems until Papa Mike comes calling with a mission, bad boys forever baby, cut to credit. We end on the fast and the furious school of ethics like Dokar Shah. Before him, Armando is freed after his son with the flick of a little card. Sure. You effortlessly assaulted with a half dozen police officials, including fan favorite Captain Howard. But as long as you agree to switch side and assassination with the people we want to be assassinated, then all will be forgiven. The film flipped from verses to team up in a blink of an eye. Woods up indeed. Such a quick turnout and now new to Bad Boys philosophy. These are righteous servant of the Lord, right? The film practically confirmed that Lowrey and Burnett are tearing up the street of Miami on God's order when he drops a gently gun in their lap during one particular motorcycle chase. When Lowrey goes down near the start of the film and the likelihood of the several appears grim, Burnett gets on hand and knee and begin for God's ear. He swears to him, but he'll turn from a life of violence as long as he spares his partner's life. The Lord answers and Burnett makes his way to retirement. Then comes a motorcycle chase and the Gatling gun that Scott's gun screaming Lowrey. Burnett revenge on his promise to get his blasting. Bad Boy believe in Old Testament visions and Old Testament bold running. If Dynamic Trant can smash his first 9 film worth of henchman while wearing a cross, then why he cannot Lowrey and Burnett? Why can't Burnett sniper happy son? Because he tore Captain Howard throat out, he put a bullet through his neck while his granddaughter was breaking basketball mere feet away. Armando didn't just slaughter nameless judges, lawyers, and policemen, he also killed a beloved franchise character. You cannot let that go. He's a bad seed and needs to spend more than a little car's worth of time behind bars. Damn it. Remember Chad, because shot Tokyo drifted him into obvious, he is still hurt about that, but Universal Studios don't care. He still got his spin-off movie. He said worry, he saved a baby from a plane, he brought the action, and that's all that required. We preach forgiveness as a society, and at least in our movies, we act on it. Justice for Han, justice for Captain Howard. Bad Boys for Life delivered the action, and if delivered the friendly, we want to be part of their club, and we can turn the other cheek and look into the way. As long as the only sporting player getting brought off, keep away from keeping puppies, and we should be good. Now let's talk about the full cast and crew of the movie Bad Boys for Life 2020. Will Smith as Mike Lowrey, Martin as Marcus Burnett, Vanessa Hawkins as Kelly, Alexander Lockwood as Dawn, Paula Nunez as Rita Scadis, Charles Milton as Rafe, Kate Del Cattilis as Isabel Aretis, Docky Jam as Loreno, Jock Petano as Captain Cowart, Theresa Randall as Theresa Burnett, Happy Addison as Ricard Jenkins, Dennis Green as Reggie, Gazette Valentine as Mexican female, Ross Pianza as Abul, Maccleby as wedding MC, Bainaz Beton as Megan, DJ Khaled as Manny, Jacob Scipio as Armando Atticus, Jackie Jam as Lorenzo, Paula Nunez as LT, Rita Scales, LT means lieutenant, Adila Morena as Abola, Sosha O'Neill as gorgeous doorwoman, Massey Forlan as Terry Taglin, Jennifer Baker as Jolly Webber, Kathy Wheeler as Bassett at wedding, Jaya Moore as Rocky Vergas, Anthony Milonry as salesman, David Shai as distributed airline passenger, Roddy Mercom as Booker Cressy, Bearman Butler as Lieutenant Butler, Normaz Alvarez as Javier wife, Christina Marcaro as female basketball referee, Errol Castillo as policeman boat cop on radio, Sharon Pfeffer as tour bus rider, Alison Kendrick as wedding singer, Bastiano Ferrari as bestie, Adrian D. Armas as Miami tourist, McDaniel Austin as detective, James William Billard as police officer, Lyra Bilas as hot Miami model, Kiko Bell as club patron, Luluvia Bermudez as prison guard, Rossi Benhard as saucer mom, Crystal Blood as pedestrian, Austin Blinger as police officer, Troy Brino as ostrich duck, Landon Brooks as doctor, Lorraine Boriloli as reporter, Matthew Berg as high-ranking police officer, Santos Corballo as Tommy Bahama type, Cowboy as police officer, Alan Markright at Gurwilan, wedding guest, Tina Dumbies as bridesmaid, S.J. Ferguson as club player, Darren Ferrero as spa attendant, James Kelly as Miami pedestrian, John Gettier as detective, Javeen Constance as valet Persian driver, John C. Cagrey as patron, Jasmine Habib as massage therapist, Athena Hatcher as boy performer, Monica Henry as police officer, Ilvia Hell as police officer, Savannah James as lawyer, J. Tyson Jordan as pedestrian, Melissa Canmore as Major Patel Miami PD, Tony Kim as club gay, Joy Rock as police officer, Hans Morio as ambulance guy, Hamida Mesquiti as Hagen Vacationer, Circus Reynolds as police officer, Kelly Opsal as basketball player, Kevin Pottery Jr. as police uniform officer, Nick Porda as Sergeant Norman Harris, Scott Rapp as detective, Felcy Amrice as Mexican prisoner, Manuel Rivera as airplane passenger, Melissa Fakre as beach goer, Lou Salad as clubber, London Sabri sexy model, Jonathan as store shopper, Landis Texan as detective, Robert Tensley as uniformed police officer, Asa Roger Turner as pedestrian mall employee, Charles Valtino as detective, Jennifer Vo as Miami tourist, Body Wetcan as officer Katie, Theodos Wilson as DJ, Camille C. Wiston as police officer, Marius Edvinson as police officer, W.A.R. Club King, Joseph Wallace as detective, Eliana Tezikias as spectator, Emily Token as hot Miami model, Brandon Michael Thomas as police officer, Max Solis as airline passenger, Patrice Sepulveda as South Beach restaurant, Paradise couple, Dominique Sunders as clubber, Ariel Rosero as spectator, Marlene Rivera as airline passenger, River Rice as cartel, Ashery Gone as girl, Mika Ramos as Miami tourist, Ranel Plyce as police officer, Brandon Parker as police officer, Bradford Norris as police officer, Andy Nazario as a lawn boy, David L. Morrison as police officer, Arami Milisi as spectator, Josh Charles as beach goer, Jamil Khan as Zello boy, Julia K as mall visitor, Sal Johnson as Lyft driver, Ariel Hines as courthouse spectator, Maxwell Highsmith as passing friend, Steve Hines as high-end mall pedestrian, William Haito as police officer, Alex Cuara as taxi driver Mexico, Will Comles as cartel member, Joseph Cambron as Taurus and Bust, Fred Gales as distinguished gentleman, Franchi Firecracker as police officer, Josh Alfredo Fernandez as cartel member, Kath DiTolli as police officer, Carol Cross as police officer, Joy Crossan as police officer, Ryan Castle as detective, Carwood Cannell as pedestrian, Tom Boy as Detective Austin, Robin E.R. Brown as South Beach patron, Sergio Brown as police officer, Edvan Booker as Zoe Boy 2, Eric Bowman as the lawn boy, Daniel Sergio Bertrand as pedestrian, Alex Bernard as police officer, Roderick Peck as police officer, Stacky Pira as woman on date, Sandy Barbosa Tommy Bahama, Misty Orsi as wedding guest, Erica Askew as Miami Beach goer, Sam Ashlilo as club guy, Demi Algendro as funeral goer, Portia J. Joseph as wedding singer, Cal Butler as skipping stunt, cop on radio, Naima Bisley as female cop on radio, Adil Lerby as ride-share driver, Bilal Fla as Fail, Bright Sander as police captain, Eduardo Rosario as the butcher, Ewan Andy as Carver Remy, Jacina Fernandez as pool party waitress, Bandy Chauhan as receptionist, Chick Bernard as Judge Leon Sorensen, Jeff J.J. Arthur as Flix's the franchise goer, Carlos Guerrero as Javier, Jasmine Lawrence as gorgeous doorwoman, Rose Beans as Beulah, Michael Bay as wedding MC, Beyonce Beton as Megan, DJ Khalis as Manny. The movie is produced by Bill Manorman, line producer, additional photography, Doug Belgard, producer PGA, Jerry Brockmeyer, producer PGA, James Lester, executive producer, Stacky Parsi, line producer Mexico, Will Smith, producer PGA, Perry H. Wildman, executive producer as Barry Wildman, Mike Stenson, executive producer, Melcy Reid, associate producer, Chad Oman, executive producer, Fair Domas, assistant producer as Fernando Domas. Now let's talk about the writing credits of the movie. Peter Craig's story, Joe Corhan story, Peter Craig screenplay, Chris Brammer screenplay, Joy Corhan screenplay, George Chalo based on character created. Makeup department, Torren Aston Barber, Vine Belotti hairstylist, second unit Miami, Canthria L. Chipman hairstylist, Daniel Dambrala assistant hairstylist, Dolly Jackrock makeup artist, and Dara Gomez key hairstylist Mexico, Candic Head hairstylist second unit, Kimberly Jones makeup department, Litoka Kelly hairstylist, Shane Lupkin assistant hairstylist, Hagen Lines key makeup artist, Jody Murdoch makeup artist, Sophia Aktov makeup artist, Alpine hairstylist, Sushi Mangesh Pister makeup artist, Scotty Sandia assistant hairstylist, Gabriel Solana key makeup artist, Shanika Terry hair department head, Carla Valek makeup artist, Urusla Woodland assistant hairstylist, Linda Sibley hairstylist, Birgit Sider additional hairstylist, Finoga Crush makeup department head, Dehona Hayes additional makeup artist, Arlene Martin hairstylist, Ren Rolling, additional makeup artist. Todd Waston, makeup effect lab technician. Will Zitwan, makeup effect lab technician. Kentaro Sano, prosthetic makeup artist. Molly Sangel, makeup artist. Alexei Rini, additional makeup artist. Natalie Johnson, additional makeup artist. Laura Dangrick, makeup artist. Nancy Cunning, additional makeup artist. Nikki Bale, hairstylist. Jason Jancy, hairstylist. Jennifer Wilson, hairstylist. Ryan Turner, makeup artist. Gianna Sparkino, hair department head, 2nd unit, Miami. Jason Siemens, hairstylist. G. Oscar Sales, makeup artist. Victor Paz, barber. Claudia Pascal, makeup artist. Tariq Nawar, barber. Traki Moss, key hairstylist. Rasika Lanhan, hairstylist. Eric Kier, key makeup artist. Lisa Jort Manesan, makeup artist. Reggie Jackson, assistant hairstylist. Sarah Cram, special effect makeup artist. Jessica Dobson, hairstylist, Miami. Bea Diaz, hairstylist, Miami. Frank Rossby, hairstylist. Lara Benham, hairstylist. Pies Erstin, hairstylist, Mr. Smith. Now let's talk about the 2nd unit director or assistant director. Jeff J.J. Arthur, first assistant director. Dodie Brown, second assistant director. Javier Clave, first assistant director. Steve Denton, second assistant director. Mike Gathard, second unit director. Jeff Hubbard, second unit director. Christopher Kelly, production assistant. Sohal Mousavi, second assistant director. Sapiro Rosarco, second unit director. Lizandra Soto, additional second assistant director. Oreen Tuavia, additional second assistant director. Marvin Williams, first assistant director. Michael Patel, set production assistant. Aristo M. Diaz, additional second assistant director. Leos Roman Homanta, set production assistant. Don Mactus, additional second assistant director. Ryan J. Patrick, additional second ad, D-Play. Giscon Ravistro, third assistant director. Thomas Steffes, production assistant. Launch Rich Anger, additional second assistant director. Kendra Pelkas, set production assistant. Iran Cocktail, second assistant director. Alexis Hillsman, additional second assistant director. Christopher Blackmore, second assistant director. Zach N.C., Ilset production assistant. John Weltmuth, first assistant director. Alicia Trana Tabo, additional second assistant director. Christopher T. Sadler, second assistant director. Robert Ratnell, second assistant director. Ryan Wilkindy, additional second assistant director. Kelly C. Austin, second assistant director, 2nd unit, Miami, as Jelly Powers. Henrik Hansen, 2nd unit director. Eric Glaser, second assistant director. Luke Crawford, second assistant director. Liusa Catlons, second assistant director from Mexico. Anthony Beckwith, additional second assistant director, 2nd unit, Miami. Now let's talk about the sound department. Kyle Ott, re-recording technician. Scott Klimes, sound mixer, 2nd unit, Miami. Terry DeVron, dialogue editor. Charles German, boom operator. Johnson Herman, mix stage engineer. Ryan Jeckler, assistant sound editor. Markina Bombley, autumn consistence. Sean Kelly, supervising Foley mixer. Atlanta Kitson, utility sound. J.K. Kaiser as dialogue editor. Laurent Casson as sound editor. Tony Liberty as re-recording mixer. Hank Martin as sound utility. Vince Nicasco as Foley artist. Kevin O'Connell as re-recording mixer. Scott Solke as dialogue editor. Whit Norris as sound mixer. Mike Charmette as sound mixer second unit, Tom Stewart as ADR engineer, Becky Salvan as supervising ADR editor, Tosi Tackleman as Foley editor, Steven Ticknor as re-recording mixer, supervising sound editor and sound designer, Patrick Edison as sound playback, Kevin Kearney as boom operator, Akra Foxwas as sound utility day player, Colin Heath as sound utility second unit, Carson X. McNaught as boom operator, Santiago Nunez as sound mixer Mexico, Doreen Sunny Rankin as dialogue editor, Chris Whiteswike as ADR mixer, Bob Williams as sound mixer, Todd Weaver as sound mixer, Antonio Tahan as sound playback, Joy Maroof as bomb operator, William E. Arish as BTF sound. Now let's talk about the art department of the movie. Roger Elwar, welder foreman, John Allen, art department assistants, Sarah Erwinites, art department coordinator, Miami, Travis Bobbitt, props, Brock Porter, set decoration coordinator, Miami, Frederick Park, senior illustrator, Greg John Claus, construction coordinator, Keith Art Chloe, prop maker, gang boss, Randy Corona, art department assistants, Mexico, Cody Courtmap, greensman, Ryan Crowley, one set dresser, second unit, Miami, Mickey Cross, plaster foreman, Federico Alessaro, storyboard artist, Gilbert Frost, staff shop foreman, Daniel B. Foster, set deck gang boss, Robert Fakwa, prop maker, gang boss, Lisa Giglotti, assistant property master, second unit, Miami, Rock Hammond, art department coordinator, Brock Hoffett, set decoration foreman, Bam Hughes, set dresser, Cheerios Rocks, art department, Kevin Johns, greensman, Nagel Jacob, reshoots, Kenji Kondo, prop maker foreman, Nathan Cromchi, assistant art director, stunts played by Don Ablito, Paul Aldani, precious designer, Brent Parham, stunts, Rocio Bernard, Jesse Brandon Butler, stunt rider, Will Smith as Brandon Butley, Jersey, Todd Bryant, Fernando Campos, Charis W. Clark, Dave Cutler, Mike Day, Leos Fernandez, Alice Ford, Andy Gill, Andrean Fulnas, Mike Gunther, Jason Albert Hanna, Zach Henry, Jermaine Holt, Michael Hoggins, CC Ice, Jacob Coppel, DiCapri, Silly Lavish, Dabo Lenabo. Now let's talk about the costume and wardrobe department. Terry Edison as assistant costume designer, Craig Anthony Cook as customer Mr. Smith, Dustin Fletcher as customer, Katie Hugh as assistant costume designer, Jess L. Johnson as key assistants, Taylor Count as customer, Tessa Kicklighter customer, Les Morgan customer, Rono Reeves customer Miami as River Revis, James Saplish key customer, Eddie Stravitt customer second unit Atlanta, Michael Toledo customer Miami, Crystal Valencia costume assistants, Amy Villalobos costume supervisor,